A lot of people think that comfort is the enemy of productivity, and this could not be further from the truth. In fact, if you have ADHD, it is extremely important that you are comfortable while you're being productive. When you have ADHD, you are more sensitive. And this is in a few different ways. So this is emotionally, this is physically. We have sensory sensitivities, like our brains kind of don't tune out noises the same way. They don't really tune out touch the same way. We're more sensitive to rejection, and we're more sensitive to what's going on internally. And we're sensitive to dopamine, to stimulation. So we're just sensitive beings. And what this means is that we're also more sensitive to discipline and to pain. And so pain is actually typically more painful for us than it is for a normal person. That is to say that when you have ADHD, you are genuinely living a life that is a lot harder than most people. There's a lot more internal turmoil. You get burnt out easier. It really is a disability, and a lot of people don't like to think about it as a disability, but it is. And you have to acknowledge that it's a disability. And so this heightened pain around just existing and living makes everything more difficult. But now that I've sort of framed it in this way, I want you to think about how much easier life would be if you weren't feeling pain so often. Well, it would be a lot easier. And it actually stands to reason that you would feel a lot better and that you would get a lot more done. So people think that they have to go through like some crucible of fire and like be a masochistic hero in order to actually grow and to make gains. But genuinely what I've seen is for people with ADHD, this mindset just leads to this incredible ping pong, feeling like you're on top of the world, trying to slay resistance. Oftentimes you're like chronically overstimulated, completely whacked out and can't even tell because of the poor ability to self-monitor. Nothing's really working right and you're forgetting everything and it's completely disorganized. It's sad. It's very sad that we get like this and we think that the thing that we need to do is just try harder and just go faster. We just have to push through and that's how we're going to transform. That's what we believe. To us, this is all we see, is if I want to transform, I have to go through the death and rebirth, and there's truth behind that. That's real. That's a real principle in reality, is that things have to die in order to ascend. But honestly, for a lot of you guys, the thing that is actually holding you back is that you won't let this mindset die. Like this is what needs to die and then be reborn. You need to actually learn how to value your comfort, how to value calm. The way I want you to think about this is a fire. So ADHD compared to a neurotypical is kind of like a fire that you can use to heat your home and cook something. It's controlled relatively, maybe not always, but it's good, it's productive, it can get things done if you work with it right. However, ADHD is sort of like this energetic chemical plasmid that's sort of like zipping and zapping and popping and sparking. And then sometimes it's like very small and there's like nothing going on. And then other times it's like explosive in energy. The fact of the matter is that if you try to like cook your food or heat your home with this, it's going to be very inconsistent. That's how ADHD, it's very inconsistent. That's how our system works. And that's actually it operating normally. There's nothing bad about that. We just have to accept that that's how it works and then figure out what we need to do to work with it. And so I find what genuinely works with it is by providing, in these two examples, maybe you can use this furnace to heat your home, or maybe you can use it to spin a turbine, right? Well, this wild, erratic ADHD energy, what it actually needs is to be channeled properly. And when you channel it properly, what you get is essentially a lot more power. But in order to channel it properly, you almost need to build like a nuclear reactor to channel you. It's not like the little stove and then the little turbine that can just produce a little bit of electricity and it's consistent. It's like, yay! It's more like it's not going to really produce anything until you build the system, and the system is sort of like orchestrally all comes online and it starts to fire and works together. It's like it's not working until it's working. And all you can really do is add like little parts here and there that make things better, and then keep using effort, and then until eventually you have this like chain reaction where it all comes together and it starts to work and the machine starts to fire properly. And then when you get that, what you'll get is a much higher yield, where your life is going to be way more awesome. It's going to be full of fulfillment and flow and power. And I absolutely believe this. But going back to our sensitivity. So what this means is that since we're so sensitive and we react to the littlest things extremely, and our system is naturally like a slot machine in terms of capacity and like what we're able to do and not do, or what's going on, it means that we kind of have to protect our calm. We kind of have to protect the moments and times when we actually are at capacity. And the way to do that is by managing your capacity, which I made a video on last week. Go ahead and check that out. But really what it means is the bad in the ADHD system spirals out of control. The good in the ADHD system spirals out of control. Every day you can always choose the upward spiral or the downward spiral. Those are your only two options when you have ADHD. There is no peaceful middle path. That's not true. Sometimes there is, but typically not for the entire day. But if you want that peaceful middle path, and if you want to more consistently be on the upward spiral, you have to stop trying to do these masochistic things where you're trying to push yourself to exhaustion, you're trying to like break your limits, you're trying to like do all this. And believe me, there's a time for that, but it's not all the time. And the way that you need to think about ADHD is because it's more sensitive, it's also more sensitive to when it's in pain and when it's in comfort. And if you're comfortable, you're going to get more done. And if you're in pain, you're going to crash and burn. This is why interest is so important with ADHD. You really can't be doing something unless you're interested in it. I mean, you can push through, but it's much better to be interested. That kind of takes me into the tactics. I'm going to start talking about these tactics that you can use to make your life more comfortable and to shift your mindset into getting more of the comfort that you actually need, as opposed to when it is time to actually surpass your limits in the traditional sense of like pushing yourself to exhaustion. Because there is a time for that. But I would say that most of the time, ADHD system should just be in a state of comfort. That's when it's going to operate the best. That's when you're actually going to be the most productive. You're going to gain momentum instead of spiraling, and it's going to be good. So interest is one of these tactics. And something I've noticed about productivity is that everybody has a really negative relationship with work. And I call this task trauma, but it's not just task trauma where it's like this learned association that work equals pain, which is not true, by the way. If you do work the right way, if you prioritize your comfort, work can actually be something fulfilling and awesome that you enjoy, even things that you typically don't like doing, like paperwork or something. And the way that you get to that state of liking math, liking paperwork, liking these things that normal people are like, ugh, don't make me do it. You have to realize that that's an attitude that was given to you by someone. It's not that you naturally, came out and just hated math. It's that something happened when you were learning math and that gave you task trauma, and now you don't like math. But there are some people who, they study math and then they get a hit of dopamine when they get the question right. And then from that point on, they live their whole life believing, yeah, I like math. And then that attitude makes them good at math versus this person who's just like, no, math sucks. I'm never going to do it. And I'm using this example because this is something that I experienced when I was in school, where I actually was this person, but I didn't know that. Because I had this attitude, I was basically blocked off from enjoying math because I was basically just mirroring the people around me. So we have to change our attitude and our relationship with everything that it is we're doing. And one way we can do this is by recognizing the good in the work that we're doing and romanticizing it. And this is something I've learned about productivity, is that there's always a way to romanticize whatever it is you're doing. There's always a way to spin a narrative in your head and sort of take on a new identity for something that you're doing that is going to basically open your eyes to the fact that this is something that you can enjoy. And the first thing to understand really is just that flow is this. Like flow is so powerful and feels so good. So if you can consistently and reliably enter a flow state by romanticizing things, and then another thing is like the ADHD system is more sensitive to flow. It gets into flow easier when the conditions are set properly. You have to make the conditions right by making your life more comfortable. The more comfortable you are, the more you're going to be okay with going and doing some work. And the more comfortable you make the task through romanticizing it, and another few tactics we're going to talk about here, the easier it's going to be to work. You don't have to be in pain all the time. You actually get to feel nice. You get to have a flow state, which feels like freaking brain candy. There's nothing better than this. Flow, my beloved. But if you sort of pick the person in your mind that's going to actually allow you to enjoy and engage and enter that flow state, that is going to help you so much. And so I'm going to give you an example. I used to work as an assistant manager, and at this point in my life was pretty stressful and I was pretty uncomfortable most of the time. And I would have utterly dreaded and hated going to work every day. And there were days I definitely did, until I sort of adopted this identity and mentality, and it was very silly, but I would literally, when I was feeling unmotivated or feeling like, wow, this sucks, this is painful, I don't want to get up, I don't want to go to work today, I would sort of like envision myself as this sort of like overworked salaryman. And it sounds so stupid, but when I did this, it made me okay with going to work, and it actually made me enjoy work. And so what's the principle behind this? Why did this work? Why did me imagining myself in frickin' Japanese energy drink commercials, swimming across the sea to get to work on time? If you watch Don Da Don, you might know. Why did this work? It's because I took on an identity that was open to the possibility that, okay, maybe this can be something that's not as bad. And when I did that, what I did is I started putting my ego to work. So here's the thing, like, it's healthy to have an ego. It's normal to have an ego. It's obviously something you need to manage. You don't want it to go out of control. You need humility. Humility is so important in productivity. It's something we're all working on. But your ego is this sort of static part of you that basically all it does is reaffirm your identity. And so if you give something to your ego to reaffirm, it's going to essentially program you in your sleep. If you start to envision yourself as the character who could be really into the work that you're doing. Another example I'll give is when I started my business, I started to like view myself as sort of like a corporate office worker, is like in his cubicle doing spreadsheets and reading through paperwork. And when I did this and sort of accepted the identity of somebody who is just able and capable of doing that, I sort of started to fall in love with like spreadsheets and doing paperwork and like all these super boring things that I would have hated otherwise. It just worked. And so this is one way we can make things more comfortable to ourselves, is we can adopt the identity and then we can romanticize or sort of create a narrative in our mind about what we're doing. So that's the really big thing. Now I just want to kind of rapid fire give you a few more suggestions, things that you can do to make your life more comfortable. So the first one is just actually prioritizing comfort. And we're more sensitive to our environment. So what I really mean by that is make your environment beautiful. You can make your environment beautiful. You can, have a clean desk, and you can sort of find an aesthetic that is related to your work that you really enjoy, put some mood lighting up, sort of create this cohesive aesthetic that is unique to you. So it's something that your ego is constantly going to identify with, where it's like, yeah, this is who I am. And it's going to compel you to actually engage and stay engaged and consistent. Now, I know that might sound silly looking at my setup and it's all like black and white, but just to kind of show you, like, this is sort of the aesthetic of my computer. Like, this is how my browser looks, and this is how my whole computer is kind of themed to be this sort of like minimal AMOLED, like what are you doing? This is not user friendly. You're not supposed to be in this part of the computer, and like less stimulating. So it's much more calm for me. And it's just an aesthetic I kind of like. And because of that, I am able to stay consistent in actually working on my computer and working on my business. And it's kind of where I'm trying to take my brand image. I'm still working on it, but we're getting there. So that's one thing you can do, is you can make your environment beautiful. Your digital environment, your physical environment, the clothes that you wear are going to change how you feel. So just make your life aesthetic. Make your work aesthetic. You're going to enjoy it a lot more. And so my other sort of tactic here is sensory input. So I'm going to show you something. I have this humidifier, this like desk humidifier that is always putting out fog. And I find that one of the flow triggers for me, which a flow trigger is basically something in your environment that makes you more conducive to flow, is when I'm in a sort of cool and humid environment, it's much easier for me to enter a flow state. And I just feel much more comfortable and clear-minded. Another thing that works for me is dim, having a dim environment, but I know other people who it's the exact opposite. They need like a bright, sunny environment with lots of plants, no cold lighting whatsoever, and it's got to be hot. And that is genuinely the thing that's going to work the best for them to be the most comfortable and to hit a flow state. And this is also likely related to their own personal aesthetic. Another thing you can do is if you're not really able to do this, something you can do is just change your work environment and go work at a coffee shop or something. Some of the people I work with do this, and it seems to work very well for them. It's also very nice because you kind of give your brain a place where it's like, okay, this is the working place. And you're sort of teaching yourself that when I come here, it's like a flow ritual that induces flow state. But this little humidifier on my desk, it's like, it makes like these like gurgling noises. And I like seeing the fog, and something I'll kind of do as a stim is sometimes I'll like put my hand over it and just like feel the cool fog. And it's very calming and it feels good. And it just makes me like being at my desk more. Another thing is, lighting a candle, like a scented candle or incense. I find that if I light a candle, there's basically no way I'm not going to study because it just sort of puts me in the mood for studying. And when you have like a good smell coming in too, it's just awesome. So play around with mood lighting, try and find your flow triggers, romanticize your work, and build up your personal aesthetic as it relates to work. Wear clothes that you like to wear that match that, and sort of just surround yourself with things that make you comfortable and feel cohesive. And if you do this, I guarantee, because you're more sensitive to your environment, that's why you get distracted more often, you are going to feel so much better. Like so much better. And it doesn't have to be a very expensive endeavor either. It can just be little things, little things that make your environment more friendly and more comfortable to you. Get a weighted blanket and wear that while you're working. Get some fidgets, keep them on your desk. Fidgets, a lot of them are like $5. Get a nice water bottle that you like. Sort of surround yourself with the energy that you think is going to make you more productive through comfort. The goal is not to just like nap and just be lazy. The goal is to find your flow triggers and then build an identity that is sort of surrounded around flow, or at least helps you get into flow. And if you're watching my videos, there's a pretty good chance that you might be a male who's highly ambitious. And so one sort of identity that you can take on that I really like and think makes me more productive is sort of see yourself as like kind of like the leader of your tribe or like the king, and you're trying to protect and organize and strategize for the realm. You're going out on raids against the enemy, who is entropy. And when you kind of get into this mindset, it can be very comfortable, and it'll sort of, I find that it's helped me in my social life as well. You're kind of building your domain. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end of the video. That is one of the most important stats on YouTube. If you like this content, go ahead and give it a like so the algorithm pushes it to more people. And go ahead and subscribe so that more content like this, how to live your most productive and fulfilled life with ADHD, will get pushed to your homepage, so you're more likely to catch momentum and actually be productive. Also, if you want, right now I'm doing my coaching for absolutely free until I get enough reviews. So you can actually have a weekly coaching with me for free. Just go ahead and click the booking link down in the description below. I would love to have you. I freaking love this job. Go ahead and comment some of your flow triggers down below in the comment section. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.